Welcome to the silent personal edition. John Tyler died in 1862. The United States did something it had never done before and has never done since. It refused to mourn a former president. No flags lowered in Washington. No national proclamation. No unifying moment of grief. Instead, his coffin was draped not in the stars and stripes, but in the flag of a government at war with the United States. In the middle of the Civil War, the death of a former American president exposed a nation so violently divided that even death could not bring it together. If you ever want a single moment that captures how brutally the Civil War split the United States, not just families and states, but the very idea of who counted as American, look at what happened when John Tyler died. Tyler was the 10th president of the United States. He'd already made history once by accident. In 1841, President William Henry Harrison died barely a month into his term, and Tyler, then vice president, insisted he was not merely acting president, but the president in full. That insistence became a lasting precedent for presidential succession, shaping how the country handles the unthinkable. But Tyler's story doesn't end with constitutional procedure. It ends with betrayal, at least in the eyes of the United States government at the time, and with a death so politically radioactive that Washington essentially pretended it didn't happen. After leaving office in 1845, Tyler returned to Virginia and lived the life of an ex-president, famous, controversial, but largely in the background. Then the secession crisis detonated the old nation. When southern states began leaving the Union, Tyler did not choose neutrality. He ultimately aligned himself with the Confederacy, and by late 1861, Virginians even elected him to serve in the Confederate House of Representatives. He never got the chance to take that seat, because in January 1862 he suffered a stroke and died in Richmond on January 18, 1862. Now, pause on that date. Early 1862. The war wasn't some settled chapter in a textbook. It was an open wound. Americans were dying by the tens of thousands, and the federal government was fighting for survival. In that context, Tyler's death was not treated as the passing of a former head of state. In the North, he was widely regarded as a traitor for joining the rebellion, and the most striking detail, the one that fuels the line you quoted, is that President Abraham Lincoln and officials in Washington did not issue the kind of formal recognition and public mourning that Americans came to expect when a president dies. Accounts of the time emphasized that Tyler's passing was ignored by Lincoln and Washington leadership because of Tyler's Confederate allegiance. That silence matters because presidential death rituals are not just ceremonies, they're signals. In the U.S., the death of a president or former president typically triggers official actions, proclamations, flags lowered, and a nationalist shared script of mourning that says, whatever our politics, the office represents the country. Over time, these practices became more standardized: national days of mourning, federal closures, half-staff orders, military honors, forming a kind of civic liturgy around presidential death. Tyler didn't get that from the United States. Instead, he received the full honors of a different country. Confederate President Jefferson Davis ordered Confederate flags flown at half-mast. Richmond treated Tyler as a major public figure of the Confederate cause, and his funeral became one of the largest ever held in the Confederate capital. Reports describe an enormous procession with high Confederate and Virginia officials participating in events staged as a statement of legitimacy. Look, even a former U.S. president is one of us. And then there is the image that seals Tyler's uniqueness in American memory: the flag on the coffin. The modern tradition is for presidents to be buried with their coffin draped in the American flag. Tyler is the exception. People keep pointing to the only president said to have been laid to rest beneath a Confederate flag rather than the U.S. flag. Whether you frame it as ignored, refused, or unrecognized, the meaning is the same. In January 1862, the United States government could not publicly honor John Tyler without implicitly honoring the Confederacy he had chosen. So the government withheld the ritual respect it typically extends to former presidents. And Tyler passed out of American civic life not with a national embrace, but with a national recoil. That's why people call it the only presidential death ignored by America. Not because newspapers didn't mention it, not because nobody noticed a former president had died, but because the institutional, official United States response that normally turns a president's death into a unifying event did not happen for him in Washington. The tragedy and the reason this story still hits is that Tyler embodied the opposite kinds of precedent early in his career. He helped define continuity of the U.S. presidency when the country faced a crisis of leadership. After Harrison's death, late in life, he chose the side trying to break the country apart. And in doing so, he made himself incompatible with the very continuity he once protected. So when Tyler died, the silence from Washington wasn't a minor snub. It was a declaration: you don't get to claim the honor of the United States. While serving its destruction, the Confederacy tried to use him as a symbol proof that their revolt was something grand enough to attract a former president. The Union, fighting to survive, treated him as what his choice implied, no longer part of the national we. And that is the deeper point behind the headline-style phrase. A president's death is usually the moment when the country pauses, lowers its flag, and speaks in one voice. John Tyler's death exposed a time when America could not speak in one voice at all, because America itself was split into two, and Tyler had made sure, by his final allegiance, that the voice coming from Washington would be silence. That silence did not erase John Tyler from history, but it permanently altered how he is remembered. In most cases, former presidents undergo a kind of softening with time. Political enemies cool. Accomplishments are reassessed. Legacies become layered and complicated rather than combative. Even controversial presidents are folded back into the broader American narrative, their funerals serving as moments of national reflection that transcend partisan lines. Tyler never received that reintegration in his own lifetime. When he died in January 1862, the Union government was not in a symbolic mood. It was fighting for its existence. Lincoln had not yet issued the Emancipation Proclamation. Confederate armies were still formidable. Washington could not risk sending a signal, even a ceremonial one, that might be interpreted as honoring a man who had formally cast his lot with the rebellion. That decision reveals something important about how presidential honor works in the United States. The rituals of mourning flags at half-staff, official proclamations, military escorts are not automatic tributes to a person. They are tributes to the office and to the idea of a continuous republic. When that continuity is threatened, the rituals themselves become political. Tyler had crossed a line no other former president has ever crossed. He actively joined a government at war with the United States, not a protest movement, not an opposition party, a rival state claiming sovereignty over American territory and fighting U.S. troops. That is why his case remains singular. Even presidents who left office under clouds of controversy, Andrew Johnson after impeachment, Richard Nixon after Watergate, remained within the American political system. However bitterly opposed, they did not take up formal roles in a government seeking to dismantle the Union. Tyler did, and the symbolism cut both ways. The Confederacy embraced him precisely because of who he had been. A former president in their ranks was propaganda gold. His funeral procession in Richmond was enormous. Confederate officials participated prominently. The draping of his coffin in the Confederate flag was not just ceremonial, it was declarative. It said, "Legitimacy lives here now." But history has a long memory. The Confederacy collapsed 3 years later. The government that honored Tyler vanished. The United States endured. And in the generations that followed, the narrative hardened. John Tyler is remembered as the only former president whose death was not officially recognized by the United States government because he had joined the Confederacy. It is worth noting, though, that ignored does not mean forgotten by the public. Newspapers in the North reported his death. People knew. What was missing was the formal national script of mourning that signals unity. That script requires a shared definition of us. In 1862, there was no shared definition left. In the end, John Tyler's death was more than a historical footnote. It was a mirror held up to a fractured nation. Here was a man who once insisted that the presidency must remain whole and continuous, even in crisis. Yet when the greatest crisis in American history arrived, he chose a government built on breaking that continuity apart. When he died, the United States responded not with ceremony, but with absence. No proclamation, no lowered flags, no shared pause. That absence spoke louder than any eulogy. Presidential funerals are meant to affirm something enduring, that the republic survives disagreement, survives scandal, survives even the death of its leaders. They are rituals of unity. Tyler's death proved that unity had limits. In 1862, allegiance outweighed office. The country he had once led could not publicly mourn a man who had formally joined its enemy.